Welcome to the Sales Masters Roundtable, hosted by Shawn Casemore.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Sales Masters Roundtable. Today, my special guest is Rodin Lozada. Rodin, thanks for joining us here on the Sales Masters Roundtable.
Thanks for having me, Shawn. It's an honor to be here with you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you taking time to squeeze us in. So as we always like to start, maybe just start by telling everybody a little bit about yourself, Rodin, your role today. How long you've been in sales?
So I'm the director of sales manager for a small safety and PPE provider called Wayne Safety, based out of Toronto. 5 years ago, people didn't know what PPE was, but something called COVID happened, and all of a sudden, we became the talk of the town. I've been with Wayne Safety, about 6.5 years now, and total in sales, probably, going on over 25 years now. I've had a pretty interesting journey. Right out of school, I got work in property management, which is, for people with thin skin, I do not suggest going into that profession. People don't want to talk to you in property management unless they've got something to complain about. So it just wasn't for me. And I kind of had an interest in marketing, and I ended up getting a job doing inside sales with a company called Tenequip, which is one of the bigger industrial suppliers in Canada. And I worked my way up through that company, starting at inside sales, into technical sales, and then eventually going out on the road with them into account management. And from there, I got recruited to one of their big competitors, a company called Acklands Granger, which has now been renamed as Granger, the biggest industrial supplier in Canada. I was there for a couple of years, and then I got recruited back to not quite Tenequip, but the family that owns Tenequip bought another company, which is now called SCN Industrial, which is the largest wholesaler for industrial supplies in Canada. And they brought me back. It was interesting because the family had bought this new company, and they recruited me back to help with the transition of bringing a new company into the ways and the policies and procedures of the way that the family wanted to do. Seeing as I had previous experience with them, they thought it was a good fit. So I came back, and I was there for 15 years before I joined up with Wayne Safety. Now, the 15 years at SCN Industrial, it was quite an experience. I got brought in as an operations guy, with the task of helping to transition the company. But in those 15 years, I touched everything from marketing to purchasing. We put in a new ERP a couple of years into that. So my job for about a year became customer complaints. And I touched everything. And after about 7-8 years of being on the desk and working in an office 9 to 5, the urge to get back on the road kind of became too much. And I approached them and said, I'm a little bored. Like, we've done a lot of the stuff that we wanted to accomplish.
Yeah.
I think it might be time for me to get back and do kind of what I was, it seems like it looks like what I was destined to do, which is, and, so I became a territory manager for SCN Industrial. And then, about 6.5, 7 years ago, Wayne Safety came calling, and they had created a new position of director of sales manager. And we had a good fit, and I've been there ever since.
Wow. So is in that varied career with some big companies, by the way. So you've been in a similar sector for a long time. Was Wayne Safety then your first real leadership role in sales, or were there some previous?
It was in sales, directly. It was a first, and that was one of the draws to go to Wayne Safety, was the fact that it was an opportunity to run a sales team, to kind of mold it into the way I thought a sales team should run.
Yeah.
But I'd had leadership roles before. Obviously, when I got brought back to SCN Industrial, it was an operations type role where I was basically the right-hand man for the branch manager, and that was a difficult task because we had inherited an entire staff,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you know
With their own culture,
with their own
right?
culture, and
Yeah.
a lot of reservations about what was happening because they've just been taken over by another company, and so there was leadership aspects to that role as well, because I was basically looking after the staff,
Yeah.
and it was hostile is probably a very strong word, but a very hesitant staff, I guess, is a good thing. But
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
and Shawn, you and I have talked about this in the past. In terms of leadership, I've been coaching high level, high performance rugby for 20 years now. And I've led several club teams to provincial championships. I've worked with professional teams. I've worked with national teams, provincial teams. So I've had a leadership role in high performance coaching for a long
Yeah.
time. And a
Yeah.
lot of that carries over to sales leadership, I find.
Yeah. Well, so that's a good point. That connection between, let's call it, high performance sports coaching versus a high performance team in a corporate environment coaching. What are one or two of the things that you find are very identical relative to your approach to coaching and your interactions with the team members?
The biggest thing that and it applies to both, sports and business wise, is when you are running a team, when you're supervising a team, people are different. So there's no cookie cutter way of saying, this is the way I'm going to manage, my team and the people that work under me. Everybody's different. Everybody has different stress points, different wants, needs. They're all at various points in their life. Some are close to retirement, some are starting their careers. So not everybody is the same, and you
Yeah.
need to understand that and treat everybody accordingly. To say the guy that's at the end of his career, and and what his goals are completely different from a guy that's been working for 10 years and is still trying to get his feet wet in the sales industry, has bounced around a little bit. You've got to treat them differently, and I've found that you've got to adapt and basically come up with different ways and strategies to deal with all the different people that you'll do. So right now I've got 6, 7 people reporting to me, and I deal with all of them in a different manner because they're all different people.
Yeah, but same um, overall, same expectations, but the individual goals, the interactions you have, right? The communication approaches and methods are all different just depending on the individual.
Yeah, we have group goals as company goals and kind of
Yeah,
where we want them to go, but how you get them there will
yeah,
differ from person to person. Some
absolutely.
people are really good at being independent, so you just kind of leave them alone. You check in on them every once in a while,
Yeah,
see how they're doing. Other people are high maintenance. They call you 3, 4, 5 times a day, and you've got to deal with those people differently. And obviously, people's results and their outputs are going to be different as well. So you treat them differently based on how they're producing, what their productivity is like. Everything you do as a sales leader is you've got to really understand your people and their
yeah,
circumstances and then form strategies on how you're going to deal with that.
yeah. So, what is maybe one of the challenges that you're facing with your sales team today? Something that you're trying to get them to achieve, or it's a milestone you'd like to move them towards, and it covers the team. What's one of the bigger challenges you're facing there?
The biggest challenge we face right now is the fact that, Wayne Safety, people don't realize, is well over 70 years old as a company. And we've been through several generations of the same family owning the company. We're now on to the third generation.
Yeah,
Um, and the owners of the company now are not the same owners as the ones that hired me.
yeah,
So as they've come into their ownership roles, they've got a different vision and different goals from what their parents had.
Yeah.
And we've slowly been transitioning some of those. We're evolving the company over the last 2 years, and
Yeah.
with moving the company in a different direction, not drastic, but enough, it brings change. And
Yeah.
with change comes resistance, the attitude of like, that's not the way we've always done it, things like
Yeah.
that. And people, as much as they say change is good, change is good, the minute you actually implement it, it all goes out the window. So over the last couple of years, we've implemented quite a bit of change, from it's actually quite extensive, to the point where 7, 8 weeks ago, we just implemented a new ERP as well. So, we're moving the company in a forward, we're modernizing it, we're implementing more measures to make the sales team accountable and measure their productivity. But it hasn't been easy because people have been kicking and screaming about, all of a sudden they're doing things that they hadn't been doing for years and things like that. So that's the biggest challenge, is to try and get these guys, the sales team, to buy in to some of this and make them realize, this is for the good of them as well as the company. Um,
Yeah.
and we've had varying degrees of success. Some people take longer to adapt to the change, but we're moving along, and I think it has been successful, but that is still the challenge, and we're going to continue moving along that road. So there's more change coming, and the challenge moving forward is to continue to get the buy-in from the sales team.
And do you find then, with more changes coming, that you're thinking a little bit about timing? Because when you look at the team, where things do affect the team, whether it's the sales team or the broader team, as you said, different people kind of go through that change curve at different rates, at different speeds, and therefore, rather than just push all the changes through, or you taking some time to say, okay, well, hold on, let's pause this for another month to give the team time to adapt, or
Yeah, when we decided to put in a lot of this new policies and procedures and things like that, it was like, okay, what can we implement now that they can adapt to quickly, with the least amount of resistance, and then say, okay, then that's stage one. And then once we can get them to a certain point where they're comfortable with a lot of that, it's like, okay, what can we put in now to bring them along, right? And it's been, we've really planned it out, where we said, okay, I think it'll take this long for them to adapt to this. And based on that, because they're now doing this and this and this, we can implement this, because it's really just an evolution of what we've already implemented. So
yeah,
it's been very well thought out on our part to get the change.
yeah,
And uh, but it still doesn't matter, as well as you plan it out. There's still going to be, people will still adapt at different rates, and we're still
yeah.
going through that. And we came through a period of 2 years where we did a lot of policies and procedures, and the sales guys go, it's too much red tape. Well, salespeople love red tape, right? So, but it had to be done. We needed to put it in, and a lot of that was, I wouldn't say painful, but it was difficult, because before I got there, there really wasn't any of that. It was for lack of a better term, a free for all,
Yeah.
where people kind of did what they wanted to do. So I had to rein that all in. And after a few years of being able to rein it in, we hit the over the head back in February with the new ERP, which is, like, that is as
The
difficult
cherry on top, eh?
that's as difficult a transition as you're going to get through. And
Yeah,
because it's completely different. and
yeah, yeah.
and sales guys, they like comfort and going back to what they do. So when we changed things completely, it was interesting.
It would have been. Well, what kind of going back then, what is something that you wish you knew when you got into sales, that would have been helpful as you progressed in your career?
I had a pretty good idea what to expect from my time coaching high performance sports teams because
Yeah.
I related, and being in a sales team myself, I really understood that. And um, you know, my sales manager at before I left SCN Industrial was fantastic. So I really kind of really tried to get as much out of him as possible, and I think he saw me in this sort of role in the future as well. So he really worked with me to prep me. But it was the whole idea of um, like I need to be more patient, I guess is a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
And even though I understood that you treat people different and people adapt and do things at different paces, I still probably need to be more patient with them.
Yeah.
Uh, I kind of maybe hammered them over the head a little bit too much to get things done and wasn't as accommodating as I probably should have been. But you'll pick that up over time, and I tend to be a little bit more patient with the sales team now.
Yeah.
But when you first get in and you're trying to make an impression, and you got to remember, like it was my first opportunity to be a sales leader.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you want to come in, you want to make an impression, and you want to, really impress your new bosses and you get on everybody's good side. But I just it's almost like I forgot that it still takes time to get all this done. And
Yeah.
as we were kind of going into that, about a year and a bit from me joining Wayne Safety, we got hit with COVID, which completely changed the equation there as well. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Put everything upside down. Well, if you think now moving forward, so thinking about the future and what we know of it, which depending on the day can be very little. What do you think is one of the bigger challenges that your sales team or sales teams in general will be facing in the future?
one of the things that I learned and we learned as a company, Wayne Safety, was we really learned a ton from COVID. And what we and it really forms a lot of kind of my thoughts going forward because we were doing well as a company, but then it just changed all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And like you said, the world turned upside down. And one of the things I learned is we had to be quick on our feet and pivot and make good decisions. And
Yeah.
not all the decisions you make are going to be correct, but you need to make good decisions because even if they were a wrong decision, if you at least had a good idea of what you were going to do with that decision, you could pivot quickly and correct it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and and so I've kind of adapted that into the way I'm looking forward now is, the thing about COVID that created in our industry is it created a whole different it brought in a lot more competition because
Yeah.
it was one of the few things that were still selling, especially during the lockdown phases. People still needed PPE and that sort of thing. So a lot of people got into the industry, and it's caused a lot more competition. It's caused, it's got drastic effects on pricing and supply in the industry. So we've had to pivot because it's not the same industry anymore
Yeah.
coming
Yeah.
out of COVID. So we had to pivot and we had to form strategies, and to in order to kind of see what's the future now, because
What's
the
next?
future wasn't what it was 5 years ago, and
Yeah.
it's changed. And
Yeah.
even now, with what's going on with the United States and their trade war and the tariffs and things like that, it's thrown us for a loop again.
Yeah.
And all the forecasts, said one thing for 2025, and we made plans and strategies based on that. And then all of a sudden, it changed suddenly, and we're going to have to be very nimble for the next couple weeks and months to see where this goes and understand how we're going to have to pivot in order to understand to deal with what's going to happen in the market, because I think right now nobody really knows what's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you're not ready to quickly move in the direction that you need to move and you dwell on things too much, you're going to get left behind.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Well, listen, Rodin, I appreciate you sharing some time with us here today. If people wanted to get in touch with you or just connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can find me on LinkedIn
Okay.
under Rodin Lozada, Rodin Lozada. You
Yeah.
will find another Rodin Lozada there. Just be aware. My parents gave me and my brother exactly the same name, so but I'm the one that works for Wayne Safety. Or
There
if
you
you
go.
reach me by email, you can reach me at rodin@waynesafety.com.
That's excellent. Well, Rodin, thanks again for your time. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem, Shawn. My pleasure.